welcome back. How are you feeling this fight week?
Fantastic. Actually able to enjoy it a little bit, so that's a change.
So can you talk to me about how different this fight week has been compared to some of your last?
Yeah, so for anybody, if you've had fighters today that are a little bit grumpy, you won't have the dudes because they're heavyweights. That very few of them are actually cutting. This is cut day for us, and you'll have quite a few not too happy people. But this is one of the best ones I've had, and the best fight weeks I've had.
What do you think of your opponent going into this fight?
I think she's a heavy-handed southpaw striker, and she's interesting.
Is that the first thought you had when you got the name, or were there some other thoughts in there?
I had this weird inkling that it was going to be her, honestly, and because I knew I was fighting at a certain date at a certain place for quite a long time, but we didn't know who the particular matchup was going to be. But there's just something in the back of my mind. It's like, I bet it's her. And we got the call, and I wasn't shocked. So we became aware of our tendencies and worked that into what we were doing training-wise, and just got ready.
So even before you had her name, were you kind of gearing your training towards thinking you might be fighting her?
Not necessarily. It was just more like I think it's going to be. But you can't guarantee it because there's so many women going into the tournament. But it was just nice finding out who it was finally.
And speaking of all the other women in the tournament, is there anybody that really excites you, that you're really amped up to fight?
So for me, when I have a particular fight, I like to see it as the end of the world. And Friday is the end of the world. This opponent is all that matters. And after that, we'll start really scoping out the competition. But I'm aware of everybody, and there's a few of them that's like, oh, she's very good at this. But it's not something I'm hyper-focusing on at the moment.
And obviously this is your second fight with the PFL. What did you learn in the first fight, maybe just about how the fight week goes and how the promotion runs, that you are glad that you were able to kind of get out when it wasn't in the tournament?
I'm extremely grateful that I was able to get a fight in with them, and it was during their finale for the championship. So I saw how it was all working while I was there. But it was just cool getting that out of the way, how everything works, how the media days work, how they run things. And it kind of took some of the nerves out of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Aspen. It seemed like the PFL were matching up so far, like UFC fighters against their champions. So like, was there in the back of your mind like you might be fighting Larissa for your first fight?
Very much so. So I did think I'd end up fighting Larissa, but it depended on if she was going into the tournament or not, because we weren't sure. I don't even know if the PFL was sure after the last performance, because they had to configure things based on what happened with her and Kayla. And usually with situations like that, it's like, oh, automatic rematch, right? But that'd be like their fourth time fighting, so it's kind of weird. So finding out she went into this tournament too is like, oh, cool, they might match us. And it still is very likely to happen.
Seems like Kayla's not in this season. Are you disappointed that you won't get the fight this season?
So the fight with Kayla's come up several times, and I'd love the fight. I'll take it if they give it to me. But I was not expecting her to be in the season, and that was something that had been discussed previously, just based on where she's at in her career and what she's done so far.
It seems lately, whenever somebody brings up your name, weight is always attached to you. Do you find it kind of annoying and kind of like disappointing? Like, you've had this big long career so far, like a lot of knockouts, but now it's like only weight's attached to you.
Not necessarily. I've dealt with worse things as far as social media goes, and usually, you'll have people straight up tell you to kill yourself, man. It's bad. And it's just like you start to ignore it. It doesn't particularly matter. I don't care what Joe Schmo thinks over there. And it's something you got to learn and get used to.
Do you think, your weaknesses and just the whole, the UFC drama, it's gonna go away sooner than later?
Eventually it will. A few more fights, we'll see.
And just how do you get your hand raised on Friday?
This opponent is, she's good at one thing, and she tries to employ that one thing a lot. And if she does that, it'll be a quick night.
Are you looking, your first fight at the PFL, I felt like everyone was making up to this big thing. Do you feel like this is going to be reintroduce yourself to the MMA audience?
Somewhat, yes. I feel every fight's you have to go out and prove yourself, and the very first fight of the tournament, going into this type of situation, you're going to have to prove yourself every single time, over and over. So, yes and no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, we're in Las Vegas, fight capital of the world. You've fought here before, including on the Khabib McGregor card. How does this fight here in Vegas compare to the other fights that you've had in Vegas?
Yeah, the craziest one for sure was the Conor Khabib card because you had people from all over the world coming in. And there's fights on the streets, all kinds of stuff. Very entertaining. So it's definitely less crazy than that, but I think like 99% of the fights on planet Earth are gonna be less crazy than that. But fighting in Vegas, that's normal. It's like you're showing up to work.
Aspen, so quality of life, peace of mind, where are you at right now in regards to PFL and fighting?
Able to enjoy life again. Actually enjoying my job, which is fantastic and something I haven't done in quite a while.
We've seen how you're a very calm gal, but when you get locked in that cage, switch turns on. When does that switch turn on for you? Is it the moment you step in? Is it tomorrow? When does it start feeling like that?
I try not to get too amped, but that's kind of hard. Even as long as I've been doing it, it's still hard. What we're doing is there's lots of emotions, there's lots of feelings involved. For me, I try not to get too excited. Honestly, when my hands are starting to get wrapped, I start getting a little overdone. But it's usually when the ref says go. Up until that point, it's like, it's extreme, and then I'm not thinking about it anymore.
When you see your opponent and you look into her eyes, have you ever been able to kind of gauge where your opponent's at mentally, what they're thinking? What's that moment like for you?
It depends. Like, honestly, like, we'll probably end up doing a stare down before this, and that's never been, like, my thing. It's like, oh, you're going to look at me meanly, or you're going to try to threaten me. It's like, chick, we're fighting tomorrow. It's like, there's no bigger equalizer than getting in there and physically trying to kill each other. Obviously, there's a ref to stop it, but still. But it's not the biggest thing for me, and usually the people that posture the most tend to be the most worried about it.
We often talk about the hikes that you go on. Is that kind of like your escape? Because this PFL season is just one after another after another. Do you still find that moment to kind of break away from fighting?
I do. Every day I try to get out and go for a hike, take the dogs out, and it's always been my peace. It's something away from the gym. I don't have to think about anything. It's just what I do to kind of breathe. Cool.
Were you able to bring the dogs? Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
No, were you able to bring the dogs?
No, so like 2 out of the 3. One of them, she's like fresh out of the shelter and is absolutely like crazy energy-wise, and she's great. She'd love everybody, but she'd be right up in here. My older girl, she totally could, but my boy, he would sit here, but it's like a cameraman that wasn't watching, he tried to grab me, he tried to get him. So, 1 out of 3. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, speaking of
Hi.
the hikes and the outdoors, if you could get paid to hike for a living, would you do that instead of fighting?
That'd be the dream, do both. Because I love what I do. I love fighting, and all of us are some form of adrenaline junkie. And at least personally, I haven't found anything that is similar to fighting, as in getting in there, fighting it out, and yeah. That's hard to say, because I love it.
And random question, but what's your favorite food?
There's a ton of foods I like, and I honestly prefer to eat pretty healthy, but like, right after the fight, it'll be something really bad for me and cheesy. Pizza.
Good choice.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Cool. Okay.